Hey everyone! In today's video, I'm going to resume my tour around the Cygnus region with my Astro-Tech AT115EDT. That is a triplet apochromatic refractor, and wow, the sun is lighting up my face right now. Hopefully, it's not going to look too bad for you guys, but I'm just going to roll with it. And anyways, like I was saying, I'm going to be using my Astro-Tech AT115, and I'm going to pair that with my Canon 60D, which has been astro-modified to allow more of the hydrogen alpha signal to come through. And at the moment, we have nothing but clear blue sky, so I'm very optimistic. But the weather forecast for tonight is actually supposed to be cloudy. But I see blue skies, I'm gonna set up. And if everything works out, this video is gonna be pretty special for me because I'm going to revisit a target that I absolutely struggled when I first started this hobby about 2 years ago. And that target would be the Veil Nebula. So I hope that you will continue watching and join me as once again, I just hope that the weather will hold out and try to image the Veil Nebula. And who knows, if it doesn't work out, if it does indeed become cloudy, then this will be a multi-day video. So let's get going. If you're ever going to take an advice from me, and you can only take one, not that I have much to give anyways, and the one advice I would give to everyone, and I hope that a lot of people would just stick by that, is plan ahead. If you can start setting up early while there's still daylight, it's probably the best thing you can do as far as making sure that you're going to have a successful night. Now, of course, you can't control the weather, but you can control how much lead time you give yourself to prepare, how much time you give yourself to frame a target or sort out any miscellaneous problem that you may have. And chances are, on any given night, your equipment, your mount, your camera, your telescope, your focus, something, your guiding, something will give you a issue that you need to sort out. So, if you have the time, I highly encourage you to start setting up as early as possible, and just make good use of the daylight and sort out any problems you have, because the earlier that you can sort out any issues that you have, the earlier that you have all your equipment set up and connected and operating, the more actual imaging time you can have throughout the night, especially during these short summer nights. So yeah, if there's one advice that you take from me, that'll be it. Start early. Wow, this thing looks huge from this perspective. I guess now you guys know why I nicknamed it Chunky. But anyways, before the sun goes down, actually I have a ton of time before the sun goes down, so I'm gonna take my time with this. I want to spend a brief moment to talk about, why I'm using the Astro-Tech AT115EDT tonight for the Veil Nebula. Now, obviously, I cannot fit the entire Veil Nebula with the Astro-Tech AT115EDT because it has a focal length of 805 millimeter, and that's actually, a fairly good amount of zoom. The only way that you're going to get the Veil Nebula in its entirety as a single shot, you need something like, around like a 250 millimeter, or maybe even like a 350 millimeter focal length. You know, something like a Red Cat 51 or a Xenostar 61. Those would be the refractor that you would use to fit the entire thing into the image. But what I'm going for tonight is actually the western portion of the Veil Nebula. Some people call it the Witch's Broom. And I hope that, you know, if I have enough time, and again, this may be the reason why this is going to be a multi-day video, I'm going to try to get the western portion, as I mentioned, the Witch's Broom, and the eastern version, the eastern portion, I like to call it the Joker Smile, because as it turns out, the Astro-Tech AT115EDT with its 805 millimeter focal length, paired with an APS-C sensor, which is my Canon 60D, both of those individual target actually fills the frame perfectly. So I should be able to get pretty good details if I were to sort of separate the Veil Nebula into the western and the eastern part. Tonight I'm going to be doing the western part, and once again, that's why I think this would be a multi-day video, or I'll just put the image at the very end of the eastern part as well. So yeah, so that's why I decided to go with the Astro-Tech AT115, because, you know, it fits both of those individual targets really nicely. So yeah, now I just gotta wait for nighttime, and it's still blue skies right now. I really hope that this weather pattern will hold out. All right, so it's about 9 p.m. and the weather is still holding nice, not a cloud in sight, and I'm super excited because I may actually get the image tonight. By the way, that's not the sun, that's the moon. I'm dealing with about 70% full moon or 60% full moon, but either way, it's pretty bright. But the good thing is the moon is already high up at 9 p.m. So by the time maybe 11 to 12 p.m. I mean 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. it'll be really low to the horizon, to the point where it doesn't really affect my images anymore. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think for the rest of this video, there's probably not a whole lot of instructional advice that I would be giving out, because instead, because I am imaging the Veil Nebula, I'm actually going to use that target, the Veil Nebula, to talk about why I got into astrophotography. And it's the feeling that you get when you're out in the night sky trying to image or just trying to enjoy the view. So with that being said, let's get to it. Okay, so a little personal backstory about the Veil Nebula and my experience with it, and why, you know, the theme of this video is not so much about instructions and giving good advice, but more about the feeling of astrophotography. So when I first started out in astrophotography about 2 years ago, one of my first targets was the Veil Nebula. And that's really because I started in the summer during the Neowise craze and also the pandemic. And so naturally, I looked up that the Veil Nebula was available. So I focused a lot of my attention and energy on the Veil Nebula. Now, I've also nicknamed this the PETA Nebula because it was an absolute pain in the ass for me. And for those of you who don't know, when I first started, I didn't use a go-to mount like the HEQ5 that you see behind me, but instead I used a inexpensive star tracker, the Skywatcher Star Adventurer Pro. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to learn from the bottom up. I didn't want to get started with an equatorial go-to mount, because I didn't know the night sky. I wanted to learn, so I wanted a tool that will allow me to learn the night sky and find my own target. At least, you know, find some of the major ones like Orion, Andromeda, Veil Nebula, of course. But you know, it was difficult because at that time, I think it was probably September by the time I got to the Veil Nebula. And by the time nightfall came, the Veil Nebula was already up at zenith. And you know, if you want a sore neck, try to look up anything near zenith manually, and try to focus and slew manually at an object that is directly above your head. And so that was my association with the Veil Nebula and why I call it the PETA Nebula. But I didn't mind because I loved the feeling of being out here underneath the night sky. I love the solitude, I love the silence, and I love the amazement and the wonders of what the universe was providing me. And so despite all the difficulties, and there were many nights where I'm like, oh my God, I've had enough of this, but I never once thought about stopping. But each and every night, I just, you know, whether I was successful or not, by the time I packed up, I was looking forward to the next clear night. So that's why the Veil Nebula is special to me. And I guess I'm saying all this is because, you know, had I got into the hobby outcome driven, I probably would have quit, because early on I was not successful. And you know, given how difficult the Veil Nebula was for me, I might have quit if I was in it for the pure outcome of, you know, getting the best picture possible. But it wasn't like that for me. It was about learning. It was about exploring. It was about, you know, trying new things. It was about asking other people how they did it. And so I guess that's what I meant by, you know, astrophotography should be about the feeling. I mean, of course, I want a great picture. Don't get me wrong, I love a great picture, but, you know, at the end of the night, if I don't get a good picture, but I enjoy myself and the feeling that I get from being underneath the night sky, oh, that's more than enough for me. So that's my little backstory of the Veil Nebula and why I am so looking forward to tonight. Well, I guess I should spend a little time to talk about how I plan on imaging the Veil Nebula. And I've already talked about the telescope and the camera, and the mount is something that I've been using for a while, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on it. But instead, I want to talk about the filter that I'll be using to help me image the Veil Nebula, which is still considered as an emission nebula, and I'll be imaging from a heavily light polluted city, San Francisco. So to help me with that, I'm going to be using, you can see it, I'm going to be using a filter called the optolong L Extreme. Now, at the time of this filter, by the way, I know I'm showing you guys a box, but the filter is already in the camera. I'm not going to disassemble it to show you guys. It's just, I'm lazy. Hope you guys wouldn't mind, but at the time of this release, when the L Extreme came out, it was probably the narrowest dual narrowband filter, coming in at 7 nanometers for both the hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. And that was, I think, maybe a year ago when this came out, or maybe a year and a half ago. But since then, there's been more filters out on the market that has a narrower band pass. I think at Tila, I don't know if I'm saying that brand correctly, they have they have a 5 nanometers bandpass for both hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. And I know that Optolong has a new version of the L Extreme called the L Ultimate, and that is supposed to be a 3 nanometer bandpass for both hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. Now, if you watch my, how to pick a filter video, you'll know that the more narrow your bandpass, the more light pollution you're going to be cutting out, and in a sense, the cleaner your hydrogen alpha and your oxygen 3 data will come out. But the downside of that is that because in essence, you're limiting the amount of photons that are actually hitting your sensor, and you're only selecting for photons within the hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3 bandpass. So therefore, the narrower filter that you go with, the more exposure time you need for, I guess, the same brightness of an image. Obviously, you can tell that I'm not an actual photographer. I just love space and universe, and I love doing astrophotography. But so I'll be using this filter to help me with tonight. Sorry, I lost my train of thoughts. And there are many more of these filters coming up. These dual narrowband filters for one-shot color camera. And another thing about going to a more narrow bandpass is that they're going to be more expensive. The more narrow they are, the more expensive they're going to be. So you got to make a choice. Like, how much do I want to throw into this hobby? Because this is a case where there's always going to be better, but at some point, and it's a personal choice. What is your level of acceptance? Like, what is good enough for you? Honestly, I've used the earlier version of this, the L Enhance, and now that I have the L Extreme, I am perfectly happy with either one. I'd love to try the L Ultimate, but I don't have that. So for now, I am perfectly happy with the L Extreme. And this is going to be the perfect filter for the Veil Nebula because, well, the Veil Nebula is essentially nothing but hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. So this is going to be great. I can't wait to show you guys how the images will look. So with that being said, I'm actually going to sit on my computer and get the session going. Okay, so apparently this camera sensor is sensitive enough to not have me use the red light. That's pretty awesome, but I guess that's just how bright my my location is for astrophotography. Anyways, so I'm imaging the Veil Nebula right now using 5 minutes at ISO 1600 on my Canon 60D, and I'm probably going to end this video here, but I guess I want to say to all of you, especially if you're beginners, the way that you should approach this hobby, of course, there comes a time where you want to be outcome oriented, but I think as you're just starting out, try to make your nights to be about the feelings, to be about the sensations, to be about the wonders of the night sky. There comes a time where it is appropriate to be outcome oriented, but I think that's more appropriate when you've decided that, hey, you know what? I want astrophotography to be part of my life. Because once you've gotten to that point, I think you would have also developed a dedication and a passion for it. And once you have dedication and passion, the outcome will come naturally by its own. So what I'm trying to say is that, as you're starting out, when you come out to the night sky, just enjoy it. Just enjoy the feeling. Don't worry about the outcome. If you have a good night, awesome. If you don't have a good night, pack it up and wait for the next night. The night sky is not going anywhere, and just yeah, if you can, find that feeling, that special feeling that only astrophotography will give to you. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time, and hopefully I'll see you guys pretty soon. I'm just waiting for more clear nights. It's been pretty rough this year. Anyways, with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Take care and clear skies, everyone. Bye.